Hello, everybody. So we have been hanging out here and hoping that Dave is going to get enough of a connection to get in here, but it hasn't happened so far. He's downloading the app for Crowdcast on his phone, so maybe that will work. But in the meantime, I want to introduce everyone and say a little bit about the book, and that way when he gets here, we can jump right in. All right. So, my name is Talia. I'm the events manager here at Flyleaf. We are finally open for browsing. Our browsing hours are Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 3 each day. We have up to 8 customers in the store at one time, and everyone has to wear a mask and use hand sanitizer. We're keeping it real safe. It took us a while to get to that point, but we are so excited to be able to see everybody back in the store again. In terms of virtual events, we're trying to do 1 to 2 virtual events weekly. Next week, we are hosting a post-election discussion with some North Carolina writers, including Jill McCorkle, Jean Nickel, Melinda Maynor-Lowry, a few other folks. So that'll be really interesting. Who knows what's going to happen, but regardless, we will be here to talk about it. And then the following week, we're hosting a couple of short story authors, Matt Randall Owain and Ashley Bryant Phillips are going to be sharing about their new book. If you would like to support Flyleaf and our guests, please keep in mind that you can follow us on Crowdcast. You can donate a few dollars to the store. We, again, are open for browsing. We just launched a T-shirt fundraiser to support staff. So if you're interested in any of that, head over to our website. And then, without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce our authors. So, along with Superchunk, John Wurster drums for the Mountain Ghost and Bob Mould, writes articles for a whole bunch of publications, including McSweeney's and Rolling Stone, and lends his voice to animated characters and audiobooks, and is on TV and all sorts of things. He's like a Renaissance man. It's crazy.
But don't hold that against me.
And Tom Maxwell is a writer and musician. His band Squirrel Nut Zippers has achieved multi-platinum status and has been featured in movies, TV shows, commercials, and a Tony Award-winning documentary soundtrack. Tommy regularly contributes to Al Jazeera America and Longreads, and his writing has also appeared in a bunch of other publications, including Slate and Oxford American. He's a faculty member of the North Carolina Writers Network and a recent inductee to the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame.
John, should we have charged for that?
Maybe.
Yeah, thinking.
And finally, our author, David Menconi, who is hopefully going to join us soon, is a longtime journalist and music critic for the Raleigh NNO. Prior to Step It Up and Go, David published a book called Comin' Right At Ya, How a Jewish Yankee Hippie Went Country, or the Often Outrageous History of Asleep at the Wheel. His new book is a compelling history of the music scene in North Carolina, a wide-ranging chronicle that celebrates the countless musical directions our state has taken over the years in a way that can only be written by an expert and sonic devotee. The book is really fun. I hope everyone has gotten a chance to pick it up. We have copies with signed book plates, look like this, that will stick in them. Tom, John, what were your thoughts on the book so far?
John, you first.
I loved it, and I learned so many things that I didn't know before. I have a couple notes here that, the one thing I'm curious about, and I hope David can get on here, is the sheer number of American Idol, like, superstars that came out of this area, the state anyway. And I wanted to ask him what he thought accounted for that. Maybe we'll know at some point.
Maybe we will. Right. Maybe we'll find out.
But I didn't know a lot about the Five Royales or that whole world. So that was really fun to learn about that, and Charlie Poole, and just the phenomenal breadth, I guess is the word, of just like the various styles of music that happen here that all went on to like huge influence. John Coltrane, Monk, etc. Just all kinds of styles, and all the pop rock that I grew up loving. So it's just I just learned so much about the different varieties of music that have come from this state and really made a huge impact on the world.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy how many different kinds of music are like North Carolina native traditions. Yeah, it's all over the map.
I share your feelings about that and your thoughts, and it's kind of a point of pride, isn't it? Like, diversity is strength, and North Carolina's, the spectrum of North Carolina's musical expression is about as wide as you're going to be able to get. Like Betty Davis. Did you know Betty Davis, the soul singer, was from North Carolina? Right. And one of the things I thought was cool about what David's doing, and I congratulate him, is that this is a bit of a corrective, I guess, in the sense that, John, you mentioned Coltrane and Monk and Nina Simone, is from Tryon. I visited Tryon recently and saw the statue that they put there and commemorate. And what's cool is, I think this was in an article, a David Menconi article that I read, was the sculptor. They made a little park and they put a sculpture of Nina Simone in it. And this is a small Western North Carolina town. And I ain't saying nothing, but I don't know how many statues of Black women there are in the state of North Carolina besides this one. But the sculptor made a heart inside the statue and put half of her ashes in the heart.
Oh my God! Wow!
Because he said, if anybody tries to remove it, they'll have to. They'll be removing a grave site.
Wow!
Right, which is super cool. That's really smart. And I grew up in Burnsville, and there's a roadside plaque. Now I've forgotten his name, which is super embarrassing to me. Charlie Riddle, who helped invent country music. Right. He was a guy from Yancey County that went around with all these names are escaping me, very famous early country family, and helped collect songs, taught them sort of guitar styles and stuff. And I didn't know about him. But he's a Black guy. I didn't know about him. And so there's a whole bunch of people. Clyde Stubblefield.
Yeah.
I mean, gee whiz, we came up as drummers. You're still
Max
drumming.
Roach. I think Max Roach is from North Carolina.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I love this big embrace of all the people and kinds of music that has come out of this. I used to call it the diaspora. There's a whole bunch of people that were born in North Carolina and got the hell out. But I think the more we do this sort of acknowledgement and embrace, the better off we are. And and David's doing that, yeah. And he says Max Roach is from North Carolina. That's so cool.
Now, Tom, you said you are from here. For some reason, I thought you migrated to North Carolina as I did.
I did when I was 6. No, not born. I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay.
From Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But as you know, when you're Southern and someone asks you where you're from, you got to tell them where you were born.
Right.
So And so where did you come from?
My brother Lane and I grew up outside of Philly, about 35 miles in the Mennonite country. And he ended up getting a scholarship to Wake Forest in the early
like as a runner or something.
Yes. Yeah. In the early 80s. And I ended up migrating down there to join a band in 86. And
the right
profile. And my experience as soon as I got down here was just like, oh my God, there's so much going on, and it's so much easier to do things here than it was up in Philadelphia. Like just being in a city and trying to get things done. It was so much easier here, and people seemed way more helpful, and people were driven in a way that I didn't see in Philadelphia. Like it was kind of like a good-natured kind of "we're gonna do it" sort of thing, and I think that's very emblematic of this state. I don't know if you found that or not.
When I came down to Chapel Hill to go to college, I was in a world that I didn't understand. how great it was. It was like everyone was in a band. If you weren't listening to music, you were making music. And, I worked with Lane at Crook's Corner. I think I worked 4 nights a week. So my band could practice the other 3 nights a week. And like every night we would be me and my friend John Enselin and Lane. Let's go down to the Cradle, see who's playing. We didn't know who was playing. The cover was $2. Let's get a beer. And in that, like an hourglass, if they're good enough after 1 beer, then we'll hang out. And I thought, every college town is like this. I got to get out of this backwater, And then I was like, no, you are blessed to live in a community where there's so much good music every night, all the time. Nobody sounds like each other. None of these bands really sounded like each other. And then the house parties and what all. It's phenomenal. I don't know how it was for any of these other artists, but I feel a lot of affection for that time in my life. A lot of gratitude.
Great days.
Yeah. And now everyone can get the fuck off my lawn.
That's right.
Just straight off.
Yeah.
Do not pass go.
Now, Tom, I always forget that you were in Metal Flake Mother for a bit. I saw you play a few times. Yeah.
Yes, I was. I did a tour with them. Great band. I'd gone to college with Quince Markham, the bass player, just a beautiful guy. I knew Randy Ward because you walk down the street and and I remember Ben and Jimbo coming into Crooks where I was tending bar, looking very excited, and because Randy had been booted and Jimbo was kicked upstairs to guitar player, and they came in, they had this look in their eye. And they asked me to sit in, and I was like, well, my God, yeah. I mean, that record was just so incredibly good. We were label mates. I felt so guilty 2 time and on my, I just was like, I'm a 1 band guy, but I couldn't help it. And we did that thing, but it sort of like, as things do. But yes, there's a picture. There's a picture of me sort of in a bathroom with them, all crowded together. So I can tell people that I did. Yeah.
Can you confirm this story? I might have the bands mixed up. It could be Zen Frisbee, but I have a funny memory of a story of either Metal Flake Mother or Zen Frisbee going up to New York, big show, and no one had change to give to the.
I think this is Zen Frisbee.
The attendant.
I think this is the great story, which I can't relate. I wouldn't try it.
Are you sure? If you need your computer, I can put you on speaker, and then we won't get an audio.
The great Zen Frisbee first trip to New York, where everything was a total clusterfuck. I don't know that I played. I mean, I played with Metal Flake Mother in New York. I think in separate bands. We played a weird like record. I don't know if it was CMJ or what was going on, but we played in the hold of a ship. that had been sunk off the coast of North Carolina. It was submerged off the coast of North Carolina, raised up, brought to New York Harbor, and we played in the hold. And
you're fine. I think honestly, your audio quality
is great. Pieces of rust would rain down in your hair.
And then
oh my God,
we'll be able to hear you fine.
I don't know what that venue is. Wow.
Oh,
okay.
It was
do you
very
mind muting your computer so we don't get
very fly by night.
Right.
They had a VW convertible on the deck, and I sat in the VW convertible drinking bourbon and looking at the Statue of Liberty. I think it was my first trip to New York.
Wow, that's pretty great.
We have got Dave on speaker on my phone.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can chime in.
Yes, the
and
Frying Pan. Chris Albee is correct. The name of that venue is the Frying Pan. Hey, David.
Yeah, it's funny. I have to have my computer muted so it doesn't echo. But so you can hear me, but I can't hear you at the moment. But I'm going to ask y'all a couple of questions and then turn off my phone and turn the sound back on so I can hear you. I was hoping to get Tom to talk about your Mammoth Records project. Just reflect a little bit on that. And John, I want to hear your latest 2 records. Talk about Mountain Goats and Bob Wolf. You're like.
Did you hear that, John?
I did. I would like you to go first, if that's all right.
Sure. Well, I've been writing creative nonfiction for a while, and it seems like I just love writing about music as much as I love making music, and got pretty good at oral histories. And so Jay Ferris, who ran Mammoth Records, which when they were around was out of Carborough in the coffee roaster building on the railroad tracks. And he said, would you help me do an oral history? And I said, yeah, I would love to. I think that it's time for Mammoth Records to, get their roadside plaque, before everybody's gone. And I've been talking to all these guys, people I knew back in the day, and talking to them. Talking to them about just, like their experiences, and really start putting pieces together that I've been given a better understanding of how that label worked and what that experience was and what their experience was. And it's actually really, I'm hearing wonderful stories. I'm talking to people like Joe Henry, who was on the label, or Angie Hart from Fronte, and people like that. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it. And when I'm not interviewing, I'm transcribing, and then I'll put together this narrative, and it'll get to you guys at some point.
That's great.
So that sounds like it might be like the Merge Records oral history, kind of, maybe?
I would hope so.
All right.
Yeah, like get it from the horses' mouths.
All right. Well, John, you've been keeping busy too. Bob Mould and Mountain Goats back to back. I guess you can't tour, obviously. But.
No, we got done both of them somehow right under the wire. I think we finished the Mountain Goats record on March 15th, and we finished recording Bob's record, I think 2 weeks before that, maybe. So we got them done right under the wire, and they got out, and now we just want to be playing those songs live, and we can't do it. So trying to figure out different ways to get it out there and promote things, and it's just you just have to think differently now, so just trying to survive, man.
John, what's that big ass studio out in Pittsburgh? That tweaky Manifold. Aren't they geared to do streaming events or televised events?
That's where we shot 2 Mountain Goats sets a month or so ago, and one went up last Friday, and one goes up tonight in about 2.5 hours.
That just makes me a candidate to be your retroactive manager, where you do the thing, and then I say, hey, have you thought about it? And you go like, yeah, we just did it, and we all make a lot of fucking money.
I write you a check for 35%. And I'm not going lower than that.
That sounds like some decisions I made back in the Scarlet Zippers days.
Right. Oh.
John, what is your next thing?
Probably go watch some TV. No, what's next? What is? I don't even know what day this is.
It's March 739.
We have a little super chunk treat coming out tomorrow that I was told I can't talk about, so I apologize for that. I was about to talk about it, and I just told I can't talk about it. What else? I'm hoping the Best Show with Tom Sharpling will relaunch again. I think we're close to that. So that's what I'm very excited about, because I really miss doing those calls with Tom every Tuesday night. So hopefully that will be coming up.
And that was anyway, right? Were you in 2 separate places?
Say again, I'm sorry?
You were both filming your audio remotely anyway, right?
Always, yeah. I'm usually in this very room, and Tom's, he's in LA now, but for the longest time he was in New Jersey. So yeah, we are almost never in the same room.
So perfect for a pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we have somebody pointing out that we need to wish you happy birthday as well.
That's right, Saturday.
Happy birthday.
72.
You don't look a
Thank you.
day younger than.
Thank you.
Great.
Someone's asking on the chat if the book talk will the book talk about Seven Brides for the Meat Wagon, and that just sort of clicked something way in the back of my head, but it's a memory I have no access to. So maybe I should ask you.
Yes.
Person, Carrie Cantwell. What the hell is Seven Brides for the Meat Wagon? Sounds like a bad decision in the mid-'90s.
It is. And it was.
What is it, John?
It was a band that will, this should be in your book, because once a year, Seven Brides for the Meat Wagon, which was a band that consisted of me on guitar, because who doesn't want to see me play guitar? Joe Ventura on drums, a guy named Rob Monk who played the young Woody Allen in Stardust Memories.
Oh my God.
Angie Carlson on keyboards from Let's Active, and Ed Crawford from Firehose on guitar. He was the ringer that made it sound good. Anyway, once a year at the Mammoth Records Christmas party, we would play a set, and it was the big alternative rock songs of that year, and it was usually in mid-December of whatever year it was. And so we'd play songs like we never knew the title of this song, and we still refer it to it as Smashing Pumpkins. It's the Rat in a Cage song.
Yeah.
We'd play that, and like All Star by who was that? Was that that was
that band? Yeah.
So that is Seven Brides for the Meat Wagon, and we did play in the last I think we played 8 years ago at a Mammoth Records shindig or something.
I'll reach out to you after this, John. I would love to hop on the phone and have you basically say that, because I would. That's got somebody already was like, I guess Jay Ferris or somebody was already telling me about that. But yeah,
the video for Superchunk's Hyper Enough was filmed in Mammoth Records.
Okay.
Yes.
I just saw that thing in David's book where, what is it, Driveway to Driveway? Mm-hmm. Was directed by Peyton Reed. Yes. Our pal. And I think some members of Squirrel and Zippers were in it, but I don't.
Yes, I have a vivid memory of Jim and Catherine showing up, and we needed people that basically it was a spoof of the Philadelphia Story. Yeah. And so they dressed in nice period specific garb that we all assumed was their everyday. So, which might have been.
Smash Mouth.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Harpo Mandrake.
So, Tom, I wonder if you could reflect a little on your time in the Zippers, what that was like. I remember talking to you in the spring of 1997 when things were blowing up, and remembering chatting up Robin Leach from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and how weird it was. What are some of your peak memories from that time and that ride you guys went
on? The ones I could share publicly.
Or have you repressed them all?
A lot of them are repressed. There was so much hilarity. There was so much laughing. I have a distinct memory of doing the Tonight Show. I can't remember people's names tonight, so it's like it's not going to do me any good to tell these anecdotes if I can't remember anybody's names. I remember doing the Horde tour and playing with Neil Young. And so I'll just tell that story really quickly, because we show up to do this festival in '97 and we're blowing up, but I still feel more or less like a tourist, like it's a ticketed ride, which it was. And we're sitting on this hillside, and I look down, and at the bottom of the hillside is Neil Young. And it was kind of hey, that's Neil Young. That's and he kept turning around and looking at us and smiling. And we were like, God, fuck me, that's Neil Young. And he kept turning around and smiling. So we went down there and talked to him. He wanted to talk to us because his son was a fan. That's why we did the tour. And John, you've had probably many of these experiences. I was like, Gosh, I sure do love that band, Buffalo Springfield. Do you still hang out with those guys in that band, Buffalo Springfield? That sure was a cool band. I really like those records, because I was 14 again with the headphones on. He was super sweet about it. I guess my favorite memory of all of my entire truncated and dazzling career was when we played a show with Al Casey. And you remember this stuff, David. We became friends with Al Casey, who was the last surviving member of Fats Waller's Rhythm. He was the guitar player for Fats Waller. He also played with Teddy Wilson. He made records with Billie Holiday. I loved his playing. I patterned myself clumsily after his playing. We befriended him. We played some shows with him. I wrote a song about him, Palin with Al. So we're in New York, Irving Plaza. He says he'll sit in. I very foolishly tried to tell him the changes of the song. The bridge is a little hard. I told him it backstage. I said, hey, Al, I completely lifted the head riff from your signature song, Buck Jumpin', for this song. And he goes, steal from the best. That's my motto. And so I tried to tell him the changes, and he's like, I'll latch on. And he played the song. He took a solo. And I swear to God, I had to turn around and face the drum kit because tears were streaming down my face. I was weeping openly. And I've not had before or since an experience that was that meaningful. In fact, I'm getting worked up about it now. And somewhere around here, I have something that his son gave me, which is his New York Musicians Union card from 1936.
Wow.
Yeah. It meant the world.
John, you've played with a bunch of your old heroes too. I mean, was there an experience like that where you got real emotional on stage?
I go the opposite. I laugh when these things happen, and I'm not trying to, but I got to play on this song that just came out with Nick Cave a few years ago, and we went to Village Recorder in Santa Monica, where they did those Steely Dan records in the same room, and I always just start laughing because I think of being 12 years old and in my parents' little room playing along with records, and now I can't believe I'm with these people. So I just started laughing, and it was this very slow, somber cover of a T-Rex song, and I'm just laughing, and thankfully he couldn't see me. And then Jason Narducci and I, we play with Bob Mould, and Jason plays on the road in Superchunk on bass. We got to play with the Pretenders for a night, just this weird one-off kind of private show, and they needed 2 American people to just come up to Massachusetts to play this show, and we did it, and I was just laughing the entire show to the point where people in the audience were just pointing at me look at what's wrong? And I don't know, I just can't believe it's happening. So yeah. So
there was a thing, John, where you were posting pictures of artifacts on Facebook, under the heading, I can't believe I hung on to this stuff.
Right.
And the stories were always amazing. Are you ever going to do anything with that, like a book?
Yeah, I've been basically I'm just going year by year at this point, just kind of writing down what I remember. And thankfully I saved all of my tour itineraries, just forever.
Oh,
so so I can just, and I've got a pretty good memory about weird little things. Oh, that was the night that I got robbed at gunpoint in Winston-Salem, where I lived for 6 years, and Superchunk played first night of a tour, and I got robbed at gunpoint outside the venue. So, so yeah, things like that. So I'll just write down little memories, but a lot of these people are still alive, so I don't want to hurt a lot of feelings now.
Yeah.
Tom, this is a question I asked John once years ago when I was, there was a stretch where every time I would interview somebody, I'd ask for catastrophe gig stories. What's the worst show you ever played? And John told me about some show on a boat somewhere where it was either Mac or Jim had to stand on a hatch or something. And it was just this terrible
It was in Paris. Yeah, there's this. I think this venue still exists. It's like Les something, and it's a boat.
So I was going to ask, what would your version of that be? What was the gig where everything went wrong?
I wish that I had a snappy answer for that. And so many things did go wrong so often. I don't remember one where we crashed and burned. I do remember playing a radio show in Chicago, and right before we went on, the octave key on my tenor saxophone just failed. So that was half of the range of that instrument, not available to me. And Ken Mosier, ever resourceful, found a coat hanger and MacGyvered it into a working octave key. So we pulled that one out. I'm sure that when I get off of this phone call, I'll remember 7 catastrophic things. I remember playing some radio festival in DC that a very drunk Andy Dick introduced us. And then at the first bar, Ken is playing the intro to the first song, and like a giant beer can just careens off his forehead at speed, very hard indeed. And he kept playing. Because that's what you do. I was impressed because I wasn't sure if he was going to go down. It hit him hard.
Wow.
Just a little concussed.
Tom, do you envision getting back into music, for anything other than fun at this point? I mean, do you think
like as a profession?
Yeah.
Fuck me, are you joking?
I guess so.
No, I don't see it happening, but I don't see a lot of things happening. I'm always going to play music, I think, because it's such a beautiful thing. And just speaking personally, John's had a better run at it because, like, I spent a long time feeling in the employ of my former self, and that was a bit of a deterrent, really. But then at some point, you just remember, oh gosh, it's all about this sort of sacred interaction with other people. The thing that musicians have that normal people don't get to have is that when you're playing with somebody and it locks in and it feels good, and then you maybe start doing things you didn't think you were capable of, you get a feeling that is irreplaceable. It's even better than being like playing in front of an adoring crowd. John, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't really, other people can't go like, yes, I felt that way at work. They probably don't. Okay. Don't mean to.
Hey.
So that's a gift, right? And what one should do with a gift is accept it, with gratitude.
Well, I hope you do play in front of crowds again. But heck, I hope that's possible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, playing in front of crowds for anyone.
Yeah.
John, Lane Wurster. Hello, Lane Wurster. What a beautiful guy. I'm going to say right now that I can't get him scheduled to do an interview, which is close to being insulting at this point. But, we'll just let it go. But he mentioned something.
He holds the mammoth secrets, I think.
All of the bodies.
I have a chapter about record companies, Mammoth among them. Book, and I was going to ask you, what are some things about Mammoth you've learned that those of us on the outside wouldn't know?
I think Mammoth is an interesting story because at its core, you have an inherent tension that kept the thing going, that was propulsive to the thing, to the thing's existence, and I think success. And on the one hand, you had Jay Ferris, who was plainly ambitious, who had an MBA from Duke and wanted to do a bunch of joint ventures and flip it and make a bunch of money. And on the other hand, you had Steve Balcom, who was a just dyed-in-the-wool music fan. So you had an indie sensibility, and they're signing indie bands, the Sidewinders or Frente or Chainsaw Kittens, or even Squirrel Nut Zippers were an indie band. I mean, nobody's looking at these bands and going like, yes, yay, platinum records. It's just probably not. And so, and it was at a time when indie music was ascendant, as we know, being of a certain age. And they were sort of both particle and wave. And then when it came time to corporatize, they did that too. And I've just learned the thing that I learned, I guess, the most is that on a fundamental level, the people who worked there, how hard they worked, how much they believed in what they were working most of the time, and how much they love each other. And to me, that's sort of the legacy that I'm getting from talking to these people about that.
Cool. I look forward to reading that someday. Do you have a working title yet?
A working title?
Yeah.
Not that I could print, not that I could say in public. No, I don't have one. Mammoth Records and Oral History, 1989 to 1999. That sounds about right. I don't know.
You know, you certainly had your interludes of locking horns with them. Has it been odd to revisit, your feelings about that? Or put all that aside?
Yes, it has. At the time, I was in a band with some deeply idiosyncratic people. I started drinking wine as soon as I stopped drinking coffee. And I think I had to sort of be that way to just deal with the mind fuck of the whole thing before, we were going to break up and then we had a hit. So then we were sort of on life support. That's my take on it. And I talked to Tom Osborne, who was the LA rep, and he told me that my song Hell wasn't being worked as a single. And so, but he felt like it was a single. So he goes into Kevin Weatherly's office, who at the time was program director at KROQ. And this was the year that Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, 1996. So all of a sudden, these radio stations, these clear channel stations were all lined up like dominoes. And he comes in, he has this very serious conversation with Kevin Weatherly. You really should play this song, really look at the history of rock and roll, something. And the guy was like, no. But then we played whatever, the Avalon, and his wife went to the show, and then he went to the show, and then we played Kevin and Bean. John knows all this shit. And then we get the coveted K-Rock ad, and then boom, they fall like dominoes. And Tom Osborne said, one of my favorite things was getting calls from program directors who said, I fucking hate this band, but I'm calling you to tell you that I'm putting them into heavy rotation. Like he said, he felt that it was very punk rock, and it was very moving for me to have that conversation with him. It was validating. But it stirred a lot up. I talked to Joe Henry and I said, hey Joe, before I press record, do you have any hardcore bitching you want to do? And he said, no, not, if you talked to me 20 years ago, I probably would have not been happy, but I understand now that basically everyone was trying to get their eggs hatched. And that's the case. And at a fundamental level, art and commerce are never going to mix. I loved my Beatles records and lots of music that I heard that record labels put out, and you listen to the clusterfuck stories of Atlantic Records, and you go like, I don't know how this ever worked. But then again, those Ray Charles records from the 50s or whatever, Led Zeppelin changed my life, So I think that it just has to be a conundrum that can never be resolved. And now I can talk to these people and go like, we did this together. We were in this together. We may have been screaming at each other, but we were in it together. And that counts for a lot.
It's interesting to hear you say you were going to break up, but then you had a hit.
Oh, yeah.
If you hadn't had the hit, the Zippers really were going to end right around there?
It's not like we talked about it, but I think we were in the studio during Perennial Favorites, and it felt like a breakup record to me. Yeah.
My understanding is that was the same situation with the Connells. They were going to break up if that record that had 74, 75 on it didn't happen. And it happened. And it kept them going for to this day. So it's funny how that happens. I think Soul Asylum went through the same thing with that whatever album, Somebody to Shove, and Black Gold was on. Same thing. It's like you're about to break up, and then you have this weird hit, and it just extends your life for decades.
Yeah, it can do. Yeah. It can do. It's not that we were like, oh, gee, we're disappointed. I have a distinct memory of going on a pilgrimage in Memphis, going to Ardent Studios. Hey, Ken, Jody Stevens from Big Star works at Ardent, so we took a fucking cab over. We got to meet Jody Stevens. Talk to the secretaries. Jody here? Yeah. Oh, I'll get him. Here comes Jody Stevens. My God, I just love those records. He's such a great drummer. Which is all the shit that I blabbed to him, and he's like, "Do you guys want some carrot cake?" Then we're eating carrot cake. He gives me Jim Dickinson's phone number. I'm on the phone asking Jim Dickinson's like, "I have a picture of Johnny Ace in his coffin." I'm like, "This is the life. This is the greatest thing." But I remember standing in the studio where Big Star did the Sister Lovers record, and asking Jody Stevens, "What was it like?" And he's like, "Oh, we couldn't get arrested. Nobody liked us." And I said, "How many copies of your first record did you sell?" 4,000. He goes, 4,000. At that time, we'd shifted 20,000 copies of our first record. And I was like, nothing is real. Don't use this. I don't ever use this as a metric for success.
Well, and
I forgot the question.
Yeah. John, y'all didn't break up. You just sort of stopped for a while. Didn't have the hit, but that seems to have helped with the longevity. 30 years later, Superchunk is basically still at it.
Oh yeah, I count my lucky stars that I was never in a band that had a hit record.
Yeah,
it can be the greatest thing, but it can also be, a nightmare. And so, Superchunk, we were just able to kind of stop for a little bit. I think we were all kind of tired of it. I know I was by around 2002, but my memory is we played a show a year or something during that time, so we never totally stopped. But by around 2010, we started up again, and it was just great to do it again after having a rest from it, and no expectations. And I think if we'd had a hit record or something, there would have been expectations about what we needed to do, what we needed to sound like, and so that there was no pressure at that point.
That hot record is the perfect example for me, because when we released it, we were touring in a van. We'd get wedding gigs, which allowed us to go to other markets to play shows. And while we're there, while we're in Los Angeles, let's play the Alligator. But it was a good record, and Pitchfork gave it 10 stars or whatever their highest rating is, and the reviewer was like, I smoked weed in the car with my mom and listened to this record on cassette. And I was like, well, this is great. We were doing great. And then it hits 8 months later, and then it's crazy being shot out of a cannon stuff. And a lot of people were like, look at this, this very cynical sellout album. And I'm like, what happened? I kind of wanted to have Richard Thompson's career. You know what I mean? Although he's probably been kicked around to 11 labels probably, but he is Richard Thompson. Where it's like, put out a record, sell 50 to 100,000 copies if you're lucky, build up a nice touring base, put out a record a year, off you go, and get better at what you do. But it's hard to do that when there's a lot of money involved and people are like, that thing you did, you should do that thing again. That's a tricky thing.
Hey, David, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You and I moved to the Triangle in the same year. You moved in 91, is that right?
I did.
That's when I moved, and I was wondering how you found the Triangle different from Austin, just in terms of the music scene.
Oh, wow. I came, I was in Austin for grad school in the mid-'80s, and then I had a few years in Boulder.
Oh, okay.
So there was an intervening stop. But, the vibe is very similar, Austin to the Triangle. Similar collegiate and state government setup, how everybody was making a living, and kids in school starting bands. And, in Austin, you had things like progressive country and some older blues players, and you had the bluegrass and old time and stuff like that around here too. So very, very similar. Tom just did a fascinating piece recently about college towns as characters that is sort of crying out to be a longer book. Who did you write that for, Tom?
I wrote it for Medium, and in fact, I'm putting together a proposal for Hachette that includes that basic idea, which will be about this Chapel Hill music scene that we've been discussing. Chapel Hill, that's parochial, you know what I mean? Chapel Hill, if it encompasses, Greensboro and Durham. And I, talking to people at Mammoth and talking to you guys, so the basic idea is, Brian Eno said this thing where he's an art student and he goes to a gallery in London when he's, before he's the most amazing band ever. And he's going to go see some Russian painters from the First World War. And he's like, I know these three guys, who are very important. But he goes in and there's all these other painters. He goes, wait a minute, whoa, what? And he said he realized, he comes up with this term scenius, which is like collective genius, I guess, where you have a community of artists who are self-supporting and they steal from each other and they inspire each other and they just make this whole beautiful thing happen. And this idea of the great man theory of like, here are the most important people that came from the thing is actually sort of looking the wrong way through the telescope, that it in fact is a community. And I just took it a little farther and said, it's not just the artists, it's people like David Menconi who are writing, or people like Bill Smith who helped start the Cat's Cradle, or everybody that was DJing at WXYC and WXDU, or Bill Neal at Crook's Corner, where you could go, you could work, or you could eat. It is a self-contained, self-supporting ecosystem, which is what I think we all lived in, as we've been discussing with such fondness.
Indeed. Well, the essay was really well done, and like I said, crying out for expansion into a book, and you're the guy to do it, so that's great.
Yeah, come on, Hachette.
Yeah, I think, knocking on wood and things. It would be it's such a wonderful story when you have a town that has Superchunk and Archers of Loaf and Dylan Fence and Picasso Trigger or Black Girls, or just it's an insane amount of expression, diversity of expression, and really good stuff, beautiful stuff. The Veldt, I would love to dig into that, so that's what I'll try to do.
All right, here's hoping. Talia, how late can we go here? What's your
5-10 more minutes?
John,
we're about to start, so I feel bad cutting off.
John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Matt Burr posted this thing, and he's like, please talk about your appearance as the talking heads in that episode of Documentary Now with Fred Armisen and Bill Hader, which I peed myself when I watched. Oh. And so it's very funny, but also like there's some inside baseball stuff that was being expressed in terms of, intra-bands dynamics that I wonder if you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how that came about. I think Fred and I were just maybe friends at that point, maybe. And he reached out, and then so he had written all these songs that were kind of in the vein of something David Byrne would do, and some were totally crazy. And Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live is in the band too. And I guess technically the band was the three of us, although I had some lines that they kept in, which I was very surprised they kept in. But Bill Hader was interesting in that he doesn't really play the bass, but he can be taught what the part is and play it perfectly. I've never seen anything like it. Like, he has no idea. My memory is he has no idea what he's playing, but he knows the shapes, and it was crazy. And we played a couple live shows too after that, and he was great. It was I'd never seen anything like it before, and so it was cut out of the final product. But the late great Hal Wilner was he had a speaking role in it that was really good. And Hal's like a great music supervisor. He died a few months ago, and anyway, he played kind of an Abby Hoffman sort of John Sinclair kind of counterculture rabble rouser in it, and he was great, but I guess his part didn't make it in. I bring him up because we shot it at this theater in the valley somewhere, and we did 2 shows. John Mulaney was the MC, so he would kind of get the crowd going, and in between shows, Hal comes up and goes, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, I'm flying home to North Carolina. He goes, "Would you stay a day?" And I go, what's going on? He said, I'm producing this recording session tomorrow, and it was this Nick Cave thing. So it was Nick Cave and Maria McKee from Bone Justice, and Courtney Love, all doing Mark Bolan songs. Courtney Love did not end up showing up, but so the entire second take of this whole show, I'm playing, but I'm just trying to work through the logistics of tomorrow, because the session was tomorrow, and so I'm thinking, I gotta see if I can keep this car for an extra day. I gotta see if so-and-so will put me up, and I gotta find these songs and learn them.
What songs did you do? I'm dying to...
With Nick Cave, we did Cosmic Dancer. And with Maria McKee, we did 2. We did, what was the first song? I can't remember the first song. And the second song was Ride a White Swan. And Courtney Love was going to do the Slider. So my memories of that night are more about the fear of the next day.
Your character had this great line, though, where someone's like, "Well, what are you going to do after the band breaks up?" Do you remember that?
Play cool drums. I think I said it as a joke, and then Bill said, "No, that should be it. That should be the line."
That's so fun that you got to work with them. I actually saw you at Fred Armisen's show at the Cradle. I think a couple years.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Fun friend to have.
That was a fun night.
He's a good drummer.
He is. He's great at that, like, super technical stuff that I don't understand at all.
Yeah.
Kind of like million things at once.
Yeah. Polyrhythm.
Yes. Complicated drumming. That's what he calls it.
Complicated drumming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never came near it.
John, will your buddy Ronald Thomas Calantal be heard from again anytime soon?
I have it right here. He was he made an appearance at the 20th anniversary of Rock Rotten Roll a few years ago. Tom and I did a whole show, but I think that was the last we heard from him. I'm sure he'll be back and as ill-informed as ever.
Still right again, I'm sure.
Yes.
David.
Yes, sir.
I'm very interested to know, because I can't imagine, even with your breadth of knowledge, that, like, you kind of had that whole book nailed down. You know what I mean, in your head. Oh boy, I want to know where you got where the book gave you an opportunity to kind of dig deep a little bit on your subject matter and what that subject matter was.
Wow. Well, from the very start, I didn't want to just try to do something that was a set of encyclopedia entries, something more with a story and a through line.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part of it just seemed to be this historic connection to populist working class traditions across a wide variety of styles. I think it's telling that in just about every chapter of the book, how somebody's going to make a living is an issue. And that's something you often don't read about in music books. You know, it gets kind of glossed over, real world logistics. And one corollary to that is even when musicians in North Carolina go pro, they kind of keep that day job mindset. I mean, even Doc Watson sort of carried himself like just a guy who worked a day job and then picked a little guitar. That's really how he kind of thought of himself. And coming up with sort of a framework to hang all this on took years and years. I mean, I had my first conversation with UNC Press about this back in 2004, and it wasn't in the entire 16 years. There were other things that came up, but a good decade of work, honestly, went into this, figuring it out as well as writing it. So I'm glad you liked it. It definitely was the hardest one I've taken on. It's about double the heft of any of the others, and I'm not looking to do anything quite that complicated again anytime soon. But it's out there.
What are you working on next, Dave?
I am doing a history of the Rounder Records label.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have to tell you, I was driving home from a practice in Durham one night in 1988, and we're listening to WXYC, and the song came on. I think it was 88. The song came on, and I'd never heard anything like it. It changed my life. It was called Seven Skeletons Found in the Yard by Lord Executor. It was a calypso from 1937. It's the whole reason hell ever existed. It was issued on Rounder. I immediately went and got the CD. Rounder, our Hooley did a couple of them, but Rounder really cranked out all of those old school calypso reissues, and that's how I learned that whole vocabulary. I hold them in such high regard. So that's very cool.
Great to hear. The three founders, they donated their archive of papers and whatnot to the Southern Folk Life Collection at UNC. And as part of that, they wanted somebody to do a book, so I'm doing it. So
I talked to John Strom, actually, for the Mammoth thing. He was in Blake Babies, and now he's the president of Rounder Records.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Is that right?
Yeah, he told me he wanted to get a job back in the day working on their, their delivery dock. And they were like, no. But now he's the president, so he feels vindicated.
Huh.
Pretty cool.
They just signed MIPSO.
They did.
Yeah.
It's kind of remarkable that just where their tentacles go everywhere. MIPSO, and then I hadn't realized the Lord Executor stuff you got turned on to was on Rounder.
Oh, yeah. Calypso Breakaway, it's a killer.
All right. I'll look for that. I'm hoping to get carte blanche to their vault, so we'll see how this goes.
Oh, David, now you're here. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts on why this state is such a hotbed for American Idol stars.
It's a weird thing. 3 winners and 15 seasons, and then some other very influential also-rans where they kind of won the whole thing without actually winning, like Chris.
Right.
I asked a whole bunch of people, and nobody really had any theories beyond maybe church singing.
Right.
Church, it's a short step from that to this rather demonstrative, super emotive pop that American Idol kind of cultivates. And, church singing can learn you to be showy in just the right way to go over. So maybe there's something to that. Fantasia fits into that. I'm not sure the other 2 winners from North Carolina, Caleb Johnson, a rock singer, and Scotty McCreary, a country singer, that applies to. But it's a theory.
Interesting. I can see it.
Makes sense.
All right. Thank you so much for everybody watching, for your patience. And then John and Tom, I really appreciate y'all hanging on while we got Dave on the phone. I know it's not perfect, but I think we were able to have a great conversation. So I'm glad that everybody was able to stick it out. Just a few quick reminders before we wrap up. We have Step It Up and Go in stock. The website says out of stock, but that's because they just came in today. So it should reload. So tomorrow it'll show back in stock. And we have signed book plates, signed by David. And we have a new merch fundraiser for staff. That's t-shirts and sweatshirts with the Flyleaf logo. I can post the link in the chat. And then we're really trying to get folks to shop early for the holidays, if you are able to, because we won't be able to have crowds in December like we usually are able to do. So if you can shop early, Shop local, keep your community, unique and beautiful. Like we were talking about, Chapel Hill has a great community kind of thing going on, and we really appreciate the support so that we can stick around. All right, well, I'm gonna take us off. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.